everybody from the Western Ag Network. I'm Russell Nemetz, and boy oh boy do we have a special guest lined up for you today. Not only is he one of Rodeo's best entertainers, but he's also one of rural America's biggest advocates for our Western way of life. Joining us is Montana native and Montana's own Flint Rasmussen, of course the professional bull riders, official entertainer, and barrowman. But as I was alluding to as well, Flint, I mean, you've also become a very important spokesperson in your travels around America for our Western way of life. And thanks for letting us drop by your studio today.
It's pretty glamorous here. We've kind of hit it big in the studio. We actually do have a studio, though.
Yeah, this is legit.
This
is legit.
I get a lot of people that say, "No, you just do that stuff from like your living room, right?" And for one, we like a little bigger space. When we decided to do all this, we wanted to do it right, because the appeal comes from, it's a visual thing, and we do audio and YouTube stuff, but I don't know how to run a lot of this. That's the big thing, is I have people that run all the equipment. I bring knowledge and the ability to speak usually, and so we have a pretty neat spot here.
Yeah, you do, and well, I have people too, because we guys like you and I from Chinook and Shoto, we need all those people out there that we can get our hands on. We're gonna have fun for the next few minutes or so, talking a little bit about your career in rodeo, a little bit about what led you to where you're at today. But first and foremost, I mean, just a few weeks ago, I mean, the world found out that you're going to retire from the dirt at PBR. He's not retiring from the PBR
Right.
altogether. We got to make that clear, but you're retiring from the barrel. You're going to move from the dirt to the announcer's booth. Talk about that decision.
I think, the announcement came out and said retiring, and I have people asking what beach I'm going to go to, and it's, I'm not quite to where I need to be able to retire, but physically, emotionally, it's been the way that I've done my job in both of those ways. I really, looking back now, I'm surprised I didn't think I'd last this long, and I'm a little surprised I did. Physically, I kind of changed the style of what I thought I should do, and kind of had my own niche in the business with the running and the dancing, very physical. And the emotional, mental side of it, I look at it as I never had a script. Every time I walk in the arena, it might be the gloomiest Sunday afternoon in a half-full arena at a PBR, and I don't have things written down and that place I'm going. It's always been about where my mind takes me with the crowd and what happens with the action. So my mind is starting to work a little different. I've started to enjoy this, looking at the sport a little different, a little more serious. I've become a little more serious, and my knees hurt. 55 years old, and right. I believe I've been doing it the way a young person would do it. So a lot has gone into it for the last few years, and I knew it would come, and probably hasn't sunk in yet, but it's all my kids know as dad's job, and it's all I've known since, mid-90s. So it's been a long road, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, those that have watched you for all these years know that when you hit that arena going into it, I mean, whether you're hurting or not, you give it all. And we certainly, as fans, have appreciated it all these years, from the start way back in the normal rodeo days and the performances to where you're at today with the PBR. So remind folks, I guess, as you make that transition here in the next few weeks from the barrel and the dirt to that announcer stand.
Yeah, and that's one, I am committed fully to that coming in the fall. Starting about the 1st of August, the PBR has about 11-week team series that they kicked off last year. And I did some TV there. They moved me into the TV booth a little, and then decided I needed to be in the arena. I kind of went back and forth, and honestly, it wore on me a little bit, not really knowing what my job would be on certain weekends. And so, but I did dip my toe in it a little bit. So sideline commentator, interviewer, that sort of thing. I've seen I've seen a lot of bull riding from a really good seat for a lot of years. And I think in something underestimated with my job, with the timing part of it, I had knowledge coming in because I grew up on the steps of an announcer stand, and so there's some knowledge of the sport there. I mean, I can't give the technicals of the free arm and, well, some I probably can. So, I mean, I have a general knowledge of the mentality of riders, what they bring to the sport, what they're going through. I think I have something to offer there, some things to say in the sport. So in the fall, we'll see how that goes. And 1 year from now, we'll see there's some things in production behind the scenes that I wouldn't mind being involved in too.
Well, as you make that transition, I mean, I think it's interesting for folks at home to know too, this isn't going to be your first stint in the announcer's booth by far. I mean, just in the very limited homework I was doing in preparation for this visit today with Flint, I mean, and I kind of remember a few of them as well, but you also did some announcing during your days at college down there in Dillon. You also did some announcing in Havre when you were teaching school up there and helping out the Northern at the time.
So you were journalisming. You did some journalism.
Yeah, I know, right? It's almost scary that I can still dip my toe in that arena too.
You know, it's funny. As you were talking, I went, how did I? When I was at college, suddenly I was the voice of the Bulldogs. I did basketball and football games. And I really didn't have any experience in that. And I knew the guy that was doing it. And his dad was the head football coach there. He was done with school and getting out of there, and asked if I wanted to do it. And holding a microphone is not a foreign thing to the men of our family. So, yeah, it's funny because TV commentating, like at rodeo or bull riding, is different than being a rodeo announcer, than a live announcer. Way different. I've never really wanted to be an in-arena announcer, a rodeo announcer. I think that sounds hard to me, but I loved doing basketball games. Bulldogs. Then I went to Havre, did some Blue Pony games, Northern Lights games in the Armory gym when the women, the skylights were so good, those glory days. And I would like to do that. I went to some tournaments here in Billings in the last couple months, and I want to do these tournaments. So 1,000 a game. That's it. That's all I need.
Yeah, you're talking Lane Nordland type salary, right?
You know, that's Nordland money, and but it did prepare me. You know, when I first started the rodeo clowning stuff, we didn't have the microphones. You know, everything we did, I'm sure you remember, was from me to the announcer to the people. So it was me to my dad to the people, or me to my brother Will to the people. And I remember the first time somebody made me wear a microphone, and it was the producer of the Northern Rodeo Finals. It was at the Metro early 90s, late 80s. He said, I want you to wear a microphone. And I thought it would ruin my shtick. I really did. I don't want a microphone, but my years through college of announcing those games, it really taught me how to be on a microphone and not be afraid to hear my voice. And now I love to hear my voice. You know,
you and everybody else in radio and television,
so that was,
and social media.
You know what's funny is you look back on your life, and going through high school, I was an athlete, but I was also a singer and drama, won music and drama awards, but won athletic awards. And that's an unusual combination. And I didn't think it was because I didn't know any better. But looking back, and that all came from being from a small town. You brought up the advocate for rural America. You know, Shoto High School, everything I did, and then went to a small college where I was active in so many things. Little did I know all of that was going to go into a bowl and mix it up and kick out what my career has been.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And here we are in 2023 and talking about the transition into the PBR's announcer's booth. But as we do this interview in your According to Flint studio, I mean, this has also led to a lot of opportunities for you to take that message to other airwaves through According to Flint and other social media platforms. Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, social media is kind of a necessary evil in what I do now. It's the way a lot of people hate social media, and there's a lot of days I do as well. It's an avenue for people to criticize or be very positive. But it allows us to connect. That's our way now of connecting with fans. The world has changed. You know, I get a lot of things. Will you be signing autographs? Where are your appearances? Sponsorship and marketing of sports and anything professional has really shifted where it's not emphasized that so much. But we connect. We can track every number of fan that clicks onto what we're doing. And we know that watching out there is that many people. And so we kick out little video shorts. We do the full, you know, long form podcast. And really I give people on social media a peek to where they're not supposed to be. I will do a Facebook Live from the locker room in the hallway of some arena and we're at whatever city we're in, and they go crazy for that. They're somewhere where they're not supposed to be, and then bring in great guests on my podcast and chat for 45 minutes or an hour. And you know, and that kind of started, we really amped it up during COVID because we had nothing else we could do. And this cameras and people's computers and people's phones was how we reached out and said, hey, we're thinking of you. We're still alive here. You know, David Allen in town called me during COVID, said, time to do that podcast, I guess. So Here we are a couple of years later. And, you know, I've always done my Outside the Barrel talk show at the NFR for about 18 years now. And people are asking me, so you're going to quit doing that stuff now too? And the reason I've done those is I love doing it, but now this gives me the next step of what I should do. And I don't have to dance and sweat and have my knees hurt. So it's a win-win.
Exactly, it sure is. Well, let's back the train up just a little bit, Flint, and maybe remind folks too how long you've actually been doing this and how you actually even became interested in becoming an entertainer in the profession of rodeo, becoming a rodeo clown, because I mean, you're truly now at the pinnacle of your career in your profession. But like any of us, when we start out at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, talk about where you were then and how you got to now.
Yeah, and I always try to do the Reader's Digest version, but it's a pretty big Reader's Digest. But, you know, my dad was, he announced here for years. He was the voice of the NRA Rodeo Association, you know, and I really didn't have much interest in rodeo. I mean, it was there because that's what we did in the summer. We hopped in and went to places like, you know, the Lewistown Fair. I knew that place inside and out, and Big Timber and Absaroka, all those places. And I was, you know, we were sitting around all those things that I was very active. Crowds didn't bother me. I was out of high school, so that rush of sports and being in front of a crowd was gone. And my brother Will and my dad and I don't know why I remember this, we were sitting around the table at my dad's house, and I don't remember how the conversation started, but I was commenting about how rodeo clowns kind of are doing all the same things as when I was 5 years old. And they kind of were, you know. I can name off the clown acts for you and the jokes. And so my brother and dad kind of called me out on it. Well, why don't you do it then? Well, I was pretty cool. I didn't need to do that. But Will, 2 weeks later, happened to be going to Superior, Montana to announce the rodeo, and knew the committee, and they trusted us. And he called him and said, Flint wants to come to work. He's going to try being a rodeo clown. And they trusted the family, and I was working for free, so that helped. And in the meantime, Lloyd Ketchum, who knew he was funny,
right?
He was bullfighting and the clown at the Lewistown Rodeo, and I was there with my dad, and he had me help him with this clown act. We blew up the outhouse, of course. And so I got a little practice there. He taught me how to put my makeup on. Lloyd Ketchum taught me how to put my makeup on. Went to Superior, it took off, and I went to White Sulphur Springs, and then I did the college rodeo in Dillon, and Don Jacobs came to me and said, I want you to do all my rodeos next summer. And I'm 19 years old. So it was my summer job in college. went on and got a teaching job and thought I was done with it, and just I had not one expectation or goal to do this for a living, to be great at it,
Yeah.
for it to turn into something. And what it did, it made me stay. I didn't do, there's a lot of young guys out there, they do something for 1 year and they're ready to go the Pendleton Roundup, dang it, you know. Well, for 5 years, I kind of perfected and polished what I was doing, going to small rodeos around Montana. And it was Lloyd Ketchum came to me and said, there's a lot of people asking about you and you could make a living at this. So I gave up teaching and thought I'd try it for a year or two and see how it went. And that was in 1993. So 30 years later, here I sit and not a teacher anymore.
No. You made that transition and you've done very well for yourself. It's funny you bring up Don Jacobs, you know, and this conversation about kind of knowing your limitations, because somewhere along the line, some people out there think, like, if you're a radio or TV farm broadcaster, then you're also you should naturally either be an auctioneer or a rodeo announcer.
Yeah, the good point. Yeah.
And I remember early on in my career, Don Jacobs calls me and he's like, hey, I know you announced the Blaine County Rodeo there in your hometown of Chinook a couple times, and I know you did it just out of the gracious of your heart, and you were okay. He's like, would you think about doing the NRA Rodeo at Roundup over the 4th of July? And I'm like, how hard could this really be, right?
Really? I mean, yeah.
I mean, how hard could it be? You
know,
talk a little bit about the sport.
Any story that starts with how hard could it be, it's going to be hard.
It's
going to be really hard.
It turned out to be like one of the biggest challenges of my life, and I remember the very next weekend, we powered through it. We got through it, but God bless his heart, he calls me up and he's like, Nemetz, he's like, you better just stick to radio and TV farm broadcasting. That was his nice of politely letting me off the hook.
You were really cheap and he got what he paid for. That's probably. Right. Yeah.
I'll never forget that. But,
yep.
But describe what it was like that day when the PBR called after all those years and asked you to be their guy.
Well, I can tell you it was an in-person deal, because came in really early in the PBR. So it had a different feel. You know, it was run more like a rodeo for a long time, where there was everybody was an independent contractor. And they'd hire whoever worked. So I was doing rodeos and PBR for a long time. I did the PBR World Finals the first time in 1997. So I've been in the PBR a while. So I would fill in the winter month. I was lucky in this business that I worked all winter. And that's a big deal in the rodeo business, because I was doing PBRs and then I'd do the Tucson Rodeo. I did Denver for a while. And I remember Randy Bernard, who was the CEO at the time, came to me in January and he said, I want you, if people want to see you, I want it to be at a PBR. I'm going to offer you this. You'll be an employee. We'll pay you this salary. And I said no, because I knew I really liked rodeo. I was winning awards. I was doing the NFR, and I couldn't imagine giving that up. And when the real rodeo season kicked off in June that year, I just felt really burned out and like I had done everything I could do, and the physical part of it. And so my first year exclusive with PBR was 2006, and it was really kind of taken off right then. And it was a career move, just to change. It really wasn't about money. It wasn't anything against rodeo. It was just I was ready to try something new and go try to be good at something else. And it's kind of my kind of show to this day. It's more like a concert tour. It's pretty high tech with concert sound and big screens, which some people like and a lot of people like, and some people don't, you know.
Well, it was a new concept. You talk about when the PBR kind of came to be in the 90s there. I remember coming down, I think it was 92 or 93. I wasn't quite out of high school yet, but the Nile, of all things, decided to do their Nile Bull Riders Invitational. And
Yes.
A buddy and I, or a couple buddies and I, came down from Chinook to here in Billings, and we're like, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, we like all the different events of normal rodeo, but when you can dial it in specifically to bull riding, we're like, this is cool and might have a future.
Well, keep in mind, in the early 90s, even into the early 2000s, you couldn't go to a standalone bull riding event at every arena. Now look, Everybody's got a bull riding somewhere. And that's where PBR comes in and says, we got to do it extra special to still be unique. But Billings had their Nile bull riding before it was a PBR.
I know.
So Billings is the longest running stop on the elite tour in PBR. And it's funny because we go to New York City and LA and Seattle and Oklahoma City, big cities. And this is it's the longest running and by far the smallest market. Well, close, Sioux Falls, South Dakota is a little bigger, but I believe we need markets like this in the PBR to really hold on to that, the base of where we came from. But, I'll give it to the PBR. If you really think about it, is there a reason we keep coming back to Billings, financially or whatever? Maybe not, but they know we just really like coming here. It's our kind of people. Besides, where else do I get to talk about Chinook sugar beaters
Yeah, exactly.
and Nashua porcupines and sunburst refiners? Where do I get to do that?
Yeah,
Nowhere.
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 That's pretty cool. Hey, I want to kind of redirect this just for a second. So we've talked a little bit about how you got into the sport of being the entertainer, either in the PRCA or the NRA days, and now what you're doing for the PBR. But in the 2000s, even as of an elite athlete that you really were in Shoto and, transitioning to where you're at today professionally, you had a pretty big scare in the 2000s. How scary was that heart attack, Flint?
2009, March 11th, 2009. At the time, it wasn't scary because I wasn't really sure what was going on. I guess I never look at it like it scared me as I look back at that. And I was in really good shape.
41.
Yeah, I was
41 years old.
And was really worried about, I was starting to rethink my career because I wasn't able to work out like I had. And I was out of breath and I was worried I was getting old and luckily I just had a heart attack. I wasn't old. And
yeah, that going for
I had
you.
that going for
life
me.
is good. Put another stint in.
And I honestly don't like to say this. You hear those stories about heart attacks and it changed my life and brought me closer to whatever. And it really, I can say now, it kind of did the opposite to me. I was angry about it. Worked out every day in great shape. And it there was a time there I had to deal with that how there's people walking around with blood like gravy and I had a heart attack and I'm working my butt off here. So there was, looking back on it, I've had to deal with it a little and realize I was angry about it and a little lost and depressed. And I wasn't out very long, which probably was good. I got back into the arena and saw, joy you can bring to people and that helped. And there's not many days go by that I don't think about it. And, I have thought about it through the years as I've gotten older, kind of anticipating that maybe something else will go wrong. And I think that plays into a little bit of maybe wanting to stop now while I'm ahead too. So, it was a weird time. My girls were pretty small and they just thought it was cool I got to ride in a helicopter. So,
God bless
but
those
thank
young
God
souls.
for rural hospitals
Right, I know.
in Montana. The Teton Medical Center in Shoto rushed, my wife at the time rushed me there and they flew me to Great Falls and stabilized me. And so without that, I probably wouldn't be here actually.
Wow.
Which would have saved you some time today. I guess.
I would have been heartbroken actually not having this chance to visit with you. Speaking of family, I mean, how important has family been for you, Flint, over the years, guiding you in this rodeo profession?
So, my mom and dad are, lucky to still have my mom and dad
Absolutely.
around. My mom and dad, 85 years old, and booked their plane tickets to the PBR World Finals in Fort Worth already, and Will and my girls, and I was, family is important. And when you talk about having a heart attack and different things, this business, it's glamour. Everybody thinks it's glamorous. You go through a lot with family and got to work through that. And I probably the biggest regret of this job is my family breaking up. You know, I can say now, a great relationship with my girls and their mom too. She played a big role in their rodeo careers, training their horses, and all of that means a lot. I've missed too much with my girls, and now they're wrapping up their rodeo careers as far as college and stuff, so I catch them when I can. But I'm lucky. My relationship with my girls is the most important thing to me, and I don't say that lightly. I know a lot of people sit in front of a camera and say it and then turn around and never see them. I talk to my girls every single day. They are great rodeo athletes. They've been very successful, and that is, you know, like I said, their mom, and I've exposed them to the right avenues to show them the right way to do it through the champions they know. But they've worked hard, and I don't think there's a few other moms and dads out there that maybe didn't think they had to work as hard, but they've worked hard, and I'm proud of that.
Well, and you should be. And those of us that follow you on social media know that you're speaking from the heart, as you just did. You're awful proud of those two girls of you that are wrapping up their careers there with the MSU rodeo team in Bozeman.
I do want to say, speaking of family, I would be remiss if I didn't. My sister's out in Oregon, but if you ever get a speeding ticket in Teton County,
That's right.
my brother Pete is the justice of the Pete. And actually, we joke that he was the only real cowboy amongst any of us. Wears a cowboy hat every day of his life. So, but he and I are close. We were a year apart in school, and we talk a lot. And it's a little more that kind of support where you're not always talking about work. That's the best.
Absolutely. Well, we probably need to start winding this interview up a little bit. Again, you're still officially with the PBR, the Professional Bull Riders. Here in the next few weeks, you're going to transition out of the barrel into the announcer's booth. Again, that's going to be exciting for us at home to be able to hear and actually see you a lot more if we're not actually at a PBR event. But again, just give your other things you've got going on, another plug for us. If we can't make it to a PBR event, we can't watch you on TV, we can still find you very much so out on social media.
Yeah, and I have a public Facebook page and Instagram, Twitter, all this stuff. And I say we because I have, you know, Bo Wagner, Logan Allen, they help me. We try to throw content out there that keeps people tied in. Like we want, I think through my career, I've made people feel like they know me. And so we do put out a lot of stuff on social media. My podcast, According to Flint, that's on YouTube. We've had we have guests from professional athletes to country music singers to rodeo world champions, and just try to, I try to bring what we have in the Western lifestyle, not just rodeo, not, you know, but everything Western. We're so in danger of losing this lifestyle that we need to keep throwing it out there for people to see, and we hope we're doing that because I've traveled even just this year, coast to coast, every major city, and it is a really good time to be a cowboy. Regardless of what we think of TV shows that bring people to Montana, it's cool to be a cowboy right now.
Well, my friend, thank you for being who
Thank
you
you,
are.
buddy.
Thanks for
Always.
giving us a few minutes of your time today, and most importantly, thank you for being one of our biggest advocates for our Western way of life out here in rural America. The world famous and my friend and Shoto native, Flint Rasmussen.